Sakhile, so great to catch up today. A real pleasure. I wanted to ask you to start with, you're sitting in a very interesting place in South Africa. Just briefly describe where you are.
Oh, you mean like in terms of my location?
Yeah. Just what you do. Yeah, where are you now? Tell us more about your work right now as well, please.
Okay, so I'm in South Africa, as you mentioned, but in Mpumalanga province, to be specific, in a small town called Lydenburg. So it's in the rural part of Mpumalanga. So that's where I am practicing as a clinical audiologist in one of the public sector hospitals here in the neighborhood. So it's a very small town. And we say this, we also do quite a lot of outreach here, in terms of audiology. So we assist also other two neighboring hospitals within this rural area.
Wow. And can you explain for everyone, first of all, just really important work and making such a big difference in community skills. So huge congratulations, especially through the pandemic.
Oh.
Just tell us a bit more about what an audiologist does, just for those who may not know.
Okay, an audiologist is a healthcare professional that is involved in the diagnosis and treatment or intervention of hearing and ear-related problems and balance issues. So basically, we're dealing with disorders that occurs in the ear. We treat them and rehabilitate them using different strategies.
Amazing. Incredibly important work, of course. And what I would like to talk about today, if it's okay as a theme for our discussion, is how do you stay motivated in this very challenging environment? I think we were talking earlier, and it sounded like even medical supplies can be challenging, right? And is that fair? So just want to go first of all about this idea of thinking about some of the basic things, working conditions, pay, all of these things. What's that like? I mean, is it a challenging environment, an easy environment? What is it like in day to day on that side?
It's a very challenging environment because we have to compromise every day. First, like we lack resources, and I think it's publicly known that public hospitals are under-resourced, understaffed, and also poor remuneration. So these are things that are also common to me at the moment.
Wow! And were you when you became a professional, started training? Were these issues? Were you aware of these issues when you were training?
Not aware. I think I was aware of one thing: the shortage of audiologists in the country. I think it's something that the professors at university kept on telling us, that you guys are needed out there. You need to work hard and go out in the communities and serve. I think that's one thing I was aware of. But whether will I be in a facility or in an environment that doesn't have adequate resources, that I wasn't aware.
Oh, well, okay. No, so really empathize, of course. But of course, you're still doing amazing work. And what I want to talk about today is how do you, when it is challenging, when the pay is not amazing, when the conditions are difficult, when you may not always have the resources you need, the equipment you need. How do you keep going? And I'd love to use this framing of purpose, autonomy, and mastery. Let's talk about purpose first. I think about purpose often about as how our work helps and serves others. You mentioned when you were training that sense of going out in the community. That was a very strong motivator.
Yes.
How do you keep that at the center, given all the challenges around you, Sakhile?
I always ask myself, like when really it's getting burning like a lot, then I ask myself, if then I leave, who will serve them? And I always ask myself that question, then I quickly get an answer. I'm like, no one. Then I go back. And also what keeps me going, what I've noticed, is feedback from patients. So in the facility where I'm working at, they really encourage a patient to give feedback and compliments and whatever through a suggestion box, which is reviewed by an independent committee in the hospital. And patients always write good things. They're like, you know what, I've been going from corner to corner. For a good 5 or 6 years or 7 years trying to solve this problem, then I am glad that you chose our little town to come serve us. And without you, I wouldn't have solved this problem. So I feel like also the patient feedback helps because they are the clients at the end of the day. If they are satisfied, it's also motivate me to continue.
Amazing, actually. So I love that idea. I love the question, first of all, about if I wasn't there, who would do it? I think it's such a powerful question. I think there's so many people will be watching this, Sakhile, around the world who are in very challenging public sector jobs, right? It might be a midwife, it might be someone in the ministry, similar kinds of broad, obviously different contexts, but similar challenges. I love that question. The idea of the suggestion box is really interesting as well. Do you sometimes find that sometimes the feedback, because it's suggestion box, it feels like a formula where it's not in control? Or have you ever had that challenge where it doesn't feel authentic or real feedback? Or do you find people are pretty honest on the feedback side?
I feel like they're pretty honest because we also ask them to write in their home language, so
Okay.
they can express themselves fully. So we're not restricting them to English or write for them or something like that. They also have a choice. We give them the choice whether you want to write or not. It's not compulsory.
Yeah.
But I feel it's authentic feedback.
Amazing. And tell me the best piece of feedback. What was the most inspiring piece of feedback you got?
Oh, this one, they said you are the best doctor for the ears.
Amazing. Well, that's a high five across the virtual screen here. So yeah.
And the other one, actually, it was quite a long piece, but I'm going to give you a summary of it. This lady is one of the patients. She is a Sunday school teacher, and she was struggling to hear. And the kids were becoming naughty there, during her Bible lessons. And eventually she came here, then I did a diagnosis, then I intervened with hearing aids. Then she went back to church and she said to me, something monumental happened at church. I'm like, what happened? She said, we had Holy Communion and the pastor was breaking the bread and pouring the wine. Then I could just hear that sound.
Amazing.
Yeah, and also she could hear birds as well because she's a gardener.
So it sounds like you, and does your hospital give you the feedback in a certain time of the month, or do you go now? How do you get it? So it goes into the box. What happens?
It's on a monthly basis. So the committee sits towards the end of the month. Then our unit supervisor go there to sit and listen to, I think they open as a committee the suggestion box. They read through the suggestion. Then the supervisors come and inform us that something was written about you, or maybe there are areas where we need to improve in terms of service, or they were compliments, and so that's how that's how we do it.
Amazing. And do you mind giving an example where there was something to improve or work on? Was there any useful feedback that helped you develop Sakhile in that sense?
Yes, it was more of a suggestion that, they were writing to us to inform people who in high authorities to procure more hearing aids. Because we're struggling with, we don't have, enough hearing aids to service our patient population. So, but patients were just saying, if we write as patients and complain to, to the high authorities, will they listen to us? We said, oh, of course. If it comes from you, then it will also carry more weight. So those are the type of service delivery improvement comments that we're receiving.
Amazing. And how did you act on that feedback? What did you do as a result of reading that, Sakhile?
Then it goes to the chief executive officer of the hospital. Then on the finance meeting, they try all by means to scratch funds in other departments that has maybe changed left and shift it to our budget so that we can procure more. And it's working very well. And I've seen exponential growth in our budget since I've started. Because when I came here, I started on 20,000, which is nothing for a hearing aid. That can be a price for one hearing aid or two. Wow. But now we're sitting on 200,000, which you can procure a good 55 to 60 hearing aids.
Wow. That's real progress. Yeah, amazing. There's such an inspiring example there. And tell me more about so I think what I'm taking away from you on the purpose front, I know how what we do helps and stirs others. It's a difficult job, difficult conditions. That I love that question of, if it wasn't me, who would do it? And that sense of responsibility I really heard in what you said, that you're making a real difference and people trust you and rely on you. That's a very powerful motivator. Then you talked about feedback and the idea of hearing directly from patients about what difference your work has made, both in their lives. I love that idea of I could hear the speech of the church and the communion and so on, all the way through to the idea of acting on the feedback in that example of using your voice more strongly. So it seems like you're naturally very, very connected to the patient, right? And So when I wrote my book last about a year ago, one thing I talked to many doctors around the world they felt disconnected. They didn't have time. They were on crazy shifts. They couldn't engage with patients at a human level as much as they would like. They couldn't have that little bit of a deeper conversation. They couldn't go into the community and so on. What advice would you give for them if you're in that situation?
The approach that I'm using an approach called patient-centered care or person-centered care. I allow the patients to lead, and it's been helpful, and it really it's been proven to have a lot of benefits, such as compliance to treatment, compliance to appointment, and they end up being advocates of their own health. So patient-centered care or person-centered care can be used interchangeably. So it's letting the patient to lead. It's actually a best way.
Amazing. Yeah. So, in the idea of almost trusting them to drive their own.
Yes.
Really interesting. What's your role?
Because I've heard one of the patients when they came to me. I'm just going to give you now an example quickly.
Yeah.
They went to the doctor at the OPD, and when they came to me, how I took history, it was more of a conversation type of style, and they said to me. And they opened up a lot, and they ended up telling me things that they didn't even reveal to their doctor. They said, no, when we get there, the doctor's always animated. It's like a yes or no. There's no open-ended question where I'm given the opportunity to pour out. So it's always pushing line, but you give us the opportunity to speak from our hearts, basically, from the start to the end. Yeah.
I love that idea. So again, I think trying to encourage the patient to own the process as well seems very important on that idea of purpose. So yeah, some very cool ideas that we can take to other fields. Let's talk about the second pillar of motivation, which is around autonomy, the sense of being able to feel in control of our lives professionally. And around the world, as I'm sure you're aware, many doctors and nurses, midwives, health professionals, community health workers feel very demotivated because they feel like they're being micromanaged by the systems around them, right? That they don't have a chance to be themselves, to really provide the care they want, to connect as people. What's your experience when it comes to autonomy and the chance to feel in control of your professional life? In terms of your job and feeling in control, what have you felt?
I feel it has many restrictions. And the restrictions are also imposed on a policy level, on an SOP level, and that's what I've noticed. And also, you are expected not to be vulnerable, not to be human. You're expected to always be tough. You are expected to wear a certain persona and be happy from 7 up until 5. You're not allowed to break down. And that's what I'm experiencing. So you take so much, but you're not allowed to speak about it. So you're only allowed to speak about maybe 0.05% of the things that bothers you. The rest you have to suck it in.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm just taking a minute to just feel for you. It's and the kind of stuff you must be experiencing is obviously incredibly intense, emotionally, physically, all of these things. But also that, how do you do? Are you able to talk to people at home, or friends, or family, or how do you compress? How do you try to find ways around that?
Yes, I speak to colleagues that I trust, so I'm privileged enough to have good friends who are my colleagues.
Okay.
I mean, in honor of confidentiality and all those things, it's not easy to open up to someone who's not in the field, who doesn't know ethics or medical ethics. So then it's easy to interact with a colleague about the case, or you might find that this patient also passed by a colleague as well. Okay. Then one can actually pour out easily on a colleague than on a family or on a friend who's not in a health, in a health field or health space.
Wow. Okay. So it sounds like all of this is very powerful, but it's something you're organizing informally. Do you think that
informally, we call them informal debriefings? So that we go out on a restaurant on a Friday in evening and have a drink and just talk about everything.
Amazing. And it sounds like that makes a big difference to you in terms of being able to talk about other experiences. What does that experience do for you as a professional when you're able to talk like that to others and share what you've been doing?
Can you repeat that last?
Yeah. Well, what is that experience of being able to share this, what you went through with other people, other professionals? What is it? How does it help you? How do you find it's helpful for you, Sakhile, as well?
Because in the process of sharing, others, they also, it sort of motivate the others to share. And also we find similarities in our struggles. And that sort of validates, like, you know what I'm going through, I'm not alone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it gives a sense of validation that it's not me, because sometimes you feel like it's only you, but only to find that some are going even through worse than what I'm going through. So,
yeah. Amazing. So no, that seems such a powerful piece. Do you think that hospitals, health systems can do more to create spaces for this in the working day, or is it better to keep this informal?
Oh, well, to me, I feel informal is better, given the context that I'm at. And also remember, we are different age groups as well. Yeah. How we perceive the world and how we perceive things is just different. So we clash in beliefs. It's just chaotic.
Yeah.
So I feel like if we are given that time slot, just vibe with people you can vibe with. Then
Wow. So I want to build on that point, Sakhile, about your different people, very different backgrounds, perspectives, generations. It sounds like as well. How do you how do you create? Do you feel you have enough freedom to be who you want to be at work in terms of the kind of care you provide, the way you engage with patients, all these things, or is there a certain very tight way you have to behave based on the hospital experience?
Yes, and also based on your superiors. You find our superiors are people like who have 30 or 40 years of experience, so they always project.
Okay.
Their clinical skills, how they were taught in like 1940s or 1950s, and we are now animated to be those type of practitioners. We are not allowed to be. You said they frown upon us adapting your own. What can I say, style of practicing. Of course, I wouldn't do something that like will that will sort of like jump the ethical. That will be out of the ethical boundaries. But I also want to be me in the process. But I don't think it's happening. It's
Interesting.
not happening.
What do you think? What if you had that freedom? What would you do differently? What things would you like to do that you can't do now? Or how would you like to be in a way that you can't be now?
Well, actually, some of the things I am doing them in my consultations, which is being too friendly, and also I don't like introducing. Although like I'm a healthcare professional, I am trained, I'm a scientist, but to relate to people, I would also like to introduce myself by my name. My name is Sakhile. Yeah, not that audiologist or.
Okay.
Yes, so that I can be relatable to people. And also in the process to share also my personal stories as well, that, hey, what you're going through, it once happened to me. It once happened to my family member, such thing. Like to make your consultations or your service delivery more relatable. Not to go according to the book.
Yeah. And the book, not just in terms of procedure, but the way that how informal you are, the kind of personal bond you build them. Okay.
Yes.
What about in terms of actual procedures or the kind of work itself? Would you do anything differently in terms of the tasks at work, or?
No, I wouldn't do anything differently, because the procedures and how we do things in audiology clinically, those are things that are rooted in evidence-based practice.
Okay, yeah.
So one would just leave them the way they are.
Yeah. Got it. But it's more who you are, that sort of relationship, how you build that to be more authentic, if I understood right. Yeah. Helpful. That's a really helpful piece on autonomy, that sense of being able to take control of our work. last area skill I want to talk about is our mastery. And what we're finding on mastery is that, of course, the technical side is important, but some of the human elements of mastery are equally important, even in very technical areas like healthcare. What do you think of the mix? Like, if you think about a good audiologist, what percentage is technical, like they know the procedures and so on, or the tests or the diagnostics, versus they're good with people, they're good with patients, they build a good relationship. How important are the two things? I know both are important, but I'm curious how you see the mix of those.
Yeah, actually, you need both. And if I can put a weight on it, you need. It's a very thought-provoking question. Actually, it's a very thought-provoking question. Very thought-provoking, actually. I would say, well, if one can actually weigh them, I would say 50-50.
Okay. Really interesting. And so 50-50 would be a rough
create a balance.
Yeah, balance. Yeah, no, there's no. It's more just to get a sense. I'm not trying to go for an exact answer. But what, in terms of your training and development, how much of it is technical? How much is more human? Like, how, in terms of where the training is focused, what would you see there?
I would say 80% is technical.
Okay.
And 20% is human. And that's why when I started my community service, of which you can call it an internship, and I was also very technical.
Okay.
And I started to see that, you know what, there's something lacking in my consultation. There's something just lacking, and which means it's the human touch. And once you bring that in, I mean, everything just changes.
Amazing. What made you? How did you realize that? Was that part of the training formally, or was it something you just observed about yourself? How did you come to that realization that human touch needed more focus, more time?
It's when I mean, most of my patients, they will they were just not understanding what I was saying, because I was using most of the time technical terms.
Okay.
To explain what's wrong with them. In audiometer, audiogram, degree of hearing loss, configuration, and that's how I was wired as well. So I had to find a way to break down all these technical terms or scientific terminology into a way that can be relatable. And I think that skill developed over time, and also through consulting with, I've started to see also scientific literature coming out on patient-centered care. I started investing my time in reading a lot about that. For example, I'm going to quote an institute in Denmark that works on patient-centered care, which is the IDA Institute, which develops tools on how to make your consultation patient-centered care, on how to provide the human touch without also losing the technicalities as well.
Got it. So it's almost that balancing act that was really important, Sakhile, to learn on that side. Okay.
Yes.
Very helpful. And then just is there anything is this something you came to that realization and you developed it, but could the field be doing more to develop these? You said about 80% of the focus is on the technical side. What could the medical what could the system do to try to improve that aspect? Could it do anything, or is it really each individual has got to develop these skills more?
I think it has to be engraved from the university, from undergraduate training. I think it has to be enforced there. Okay. I think if they invest in that during undergraduate training, already they will come to clinical practice with those skills cultivated.
Okay. Yeah, really interesting. In the undergraduate training, did you deal with people and patients a lot, or was it mostly lecture room and very theoretical?
Not much on patients, but also we're doing group assessment, where like a group of students will work on one patient and perform different procedures. And sometimes you find that we're struggling to find patients for training. Then we will do a lot of skills lab. And yeah, there was not really much exposure as in real life patients. I would say like the patient that, we were practicing more in a private practice type of style, but not exposed much in the public sector. So elite patients are something different than the public sector one, where you need to serve the poor community. It's a different story.
Okay.
So I was serving patients who were educated,
okay.
who were already, who were clued up about many things. So which made the process much easier compared to an 80-year-old who's illiterate, who cannot write.
Got it. So it's almost it's making it more practical, building those skills earlier, but also the type of patients, exposing you to the type of patients that you will actually be working with in a clinical domain, right? It also feels important as well. Yeah. Thanks, Kid. We covered a lot. So I think it for me, it's been a very inspiring discussion around how do you keep your purpose, your motivation going in very challenging contexts. And I think we learned a lot about the importance of being close to the patient, getting that feedback, thinking about your role and remembering that each time, that test about what happens if I wasn't there. I love that phrase. I took a lot away from this idea of autonomy and this idea of being your whole self, being a real person, rather than kind of a brain on a stick, as I used to, some people say in my career, where just so how to allow that to happen. You still follow procedures. You're not going off the evidence-based practice track, but you are able to be a bit more informal, a bit more personal, be a bit more of a human, really, right? The core of that, and maybe that can help there as well.
Yes.
And on the mastery side, what I'm taking away is this ability to reweight the human skills and make that stronger. Maybe 50-50 is a very interesting idea. What would that mean in terms of the kind of things we develop, and are we developing with the right kind of patience in training, and especially early on? So we're there. I also was very struck by what we said about the emotional toll of this job and the idea of sharing that openly, being able to have vulnerable conversations with others there that are coming through. Is there anything else? I think there's a lot of inspiration here for anyone in a tough job in public service about how to stay motivated. Anything we've missed? Anything you wanted to add to our conversation?
That's actually nothing. I feel like I've poured everything out.
Great. No, and I hope it's been a really helpful outpouring.
Sakhile as well. I always stand with with the statement that I told you in the opening, that if I'm not here, who will? I think that's like my biggest driver. That's what my biggest motivator is. What stabilizes my cup always. It serves many benefits. Of course, I need to answer that question honestly, and always answer it honestly, that no one.
I think it's a really powerful question, and I think this, to me, the big takeaway from our conversation maybe is that, obviously we want our leaders to change, we want our systems to change. That I hope we're going in a good direction, but that'll take time. But there's a lot we can do as individual practitioners and leaders to get our own mindset right, and to try to make sense of what we're doing and stay motivated, and to find that keeping that purpose deeply intact as well.
Though we always want the bottom up, the top down approach, but we can also start the bottom up approach. We can meet halfway or wherever, on the journey. So I feel like, both sides, they also have a role to play, us on the ground and our leaders on top. So it's not a one way, top down, bottom up approach. Same.
No, and I see in so many sectors that conversation happening between those levels is so important. That open conversation, that vulnerable conversation. I hope today will inspire many people in public service to have that conversation, to start that discussion, which is so important. Thank you so much for your time. I know you're super busy and you've got patients and other things to see as well, but I really appreciate the chance to go deep and understand. It's very, very inspiring, and I'm in awe of what you do. And please keep going, and I know your example will inspire many others. Thank you, Sakhile.
I appreciate it.